Hi, everybody. This is Fresh Astrology, and we're talking about how to stay positive in times of change. And so I really brought this up on my Facebook page because this is something I'm working on. So this is an area that I'm contemplating, and so I've been thinking about it a lot and practicing. Like, how do I stay positive? What does it mean to stay positive? What are tools I can use to stay positive? And so when I posted, I just had this series of like sayings, like words that just came to me that I was posting on my Facebook page for Fresh Astrology. And one was, it was just the words were staying positive in times of change. So somebody said, how? So it was a good question. And we're going to contemplate that here. So what does it mean, even like once you start working with words, so the statement was staying positive in times of change. What does it mean to be positive? Really? Like, what does that feel like? What kind of internal emotional state underlies positivity? There are components of being positive. So arguably positive, is contrasted with negative. Negative seems like bad, so positive seems good. And I mean, really, we have to think about this, because if we want to think about how to do it, we need to understand what it is. So positive is, versus negative, maybe good versus bad. But again, that's sort of wishy-washy to me. Like, I'm a wordsmith. I started to think, well, what does good mean? I don't know what good means exactly. Like, how do I feel good? What does good feel like? So, what I got to in thinking about it was really what I wanted in times of great change, when a lot of stuff's going on and it can get stressful. Really what I want to be is calm. I want to be de-stressed. I don't want to be stressed out. So I want to be something that isn't stressed. And when I feel calm, that creates kind of the soil for growing positivity, for growing something good. The soil, like a better soil to grow hope, a better soil to grow peace. All things good seem to grow from, this thing called calm, as opposed to feeling freaked out and stressed. So I think what we're talking about here is how to stay positive, calm, how to stay calm in times of change. Because change by nature isn't calm. It's like moving around, it's frenetic. And calm is like this inner pool of peace that we can carry with us, that we have available to us at all times, even if we're not really aware we have it. Because a lot of people, like, I get like this, I'm assuming I'm not a total alien, that other people feel like this, and I hear other people talk about, just running around trying to do your life, to the extent that we lose touch with being calm. Like, that's almost a foreign concept. So some of us need to just get back in touch with what calm feels like. And to do that, we may need tools we can use to find a way into that inner reservoir of calm that I think we all have. We have it, but we get out of touch with it because we're way out here running forward, or we're caught up in our thoughts, or we're caught up in the past somehow. Sometimes we're caught up in this standoff between us and them, and what we think and what you think, and there's a lot of that going on right now. And when we're all caught up in that, we're not in that inner reservoir of calm. We're not hanging out there and working our lives from that place. When we're not there, we're working our lives from a place of being off-center, out of alignment with ourselves, and often operating from a place of fear rather than that inner reservoir of calm and peace, and kind of a deeper knowing and a higher wisdom that's kind of associated with that internal peace. So how do we fix that? If we're all in our heads and we're racing around, and we're out of touch with that sense of calm, we don't even know what that means. How do we get back there? How do we do that? And so there's some very common ways a lot of people report quickly reducing stress, quickly reducing fear, quickly releasing some outer concerns. There's certain very universal things that people do, and one is connecting with nature somehow. And nature's a broad thing. So what does that mean to connect with nature? It does not have to mean, getting a backpack and going on some kind of grueling hike through the mountains for 10 days, or, going to a national park and hiking into the wilderness. That's nature. That's a great way to connect with nature, but that's not the only way. You don't even have to take a walk, although it would be great if you could, but you can connect with nature just by playing with your cat, or playing with your dog, or watching a funny cat video is actually connecting with nature. You're putting your attention on something in nature other than you, a cat, and you're connecting. It has this emotional connection. It's why funny cat videos or cute cat videos are so popular. They're wildly popular because it's this great way to connect with that part of ourselves that's more playful, that's calm, that's spontaneous, that's positive. And it gets us back there very quickly. It's like a medicine that we can do to connect with nature. And we can do it in a variety of ways. You can watch a funny cat video inside a house, really disconnected from trees and the outdoor and fresh air, and still connect with nature. But it's great to do a variety of things. Like to get outside more is definitely a great way to bring yourself back into that place of calm, to connect with that part of you that's always there, but we just get disconnected by getting distracted. So watching animal videos, going outside. And again, you can be in a city and connect with nature because just by virtue of being outside, you're breathing the air. Maybe some city air is fresher than others, but you can look up at the sky more easily. You can notice what time of day it is. You can notice the condition of the weather. You can notice the temperature. Just getting outside of a man-made space and connecting with nature briefly, even just for a few minutes, can start to bring us closer into that kind of alignment with ourselves that feels more calm, feels more positive. Another way is to do something that brings us into what people call the zone, that zone of where we do feel really at one with ourselves and with everything around us. And for some people can meditate and like meditation, that's one way to bring yourself to release a lot of the concerns of the world, get rid of the flurry of thoughts that crowd our mind. Meditation is a way to let all that out, just to release it for the time that you're meditating. Some people do a form of prayer that's a releasing of their worries over to a higher power. Not all forms of prayer bring us into alignment with that inner calm. If you're praying out of fear, like, please don't let this happen, please don't listen, or please make this happen, it's all about fear and wanting, that's a different kind of prayer. But if the prayer is more like, I'm releasing this over to you, you higher power, I'm throwing it out to the universe, I'm giving it over to God, that kind of prayer is would bring you back into a place. It would release that stuff and bring you back into a centered place. Some people don't pray, and some people don't meditate, but a lot of people can get into their zone by doing something they really love that brings them there. Like a lot of runners report that feeling. A lot of athletes who really love whatever it is they do find that activity is what brings them back into a place of alignment and calm, and inner, deep internal calm. So some kind of activity you really enjoy. A lot of gardeners, people working, and that's you're connecting with nature with gardening, even if it's like an inside garden or just on a balcony. It could be a little garden. But working with plants for a lot of people, they just get kind of into a zone with that. Cooking for some people, or whatever your creative art, something you like to do creatively. So there are many ways, and most people have a sense for something in their life that brings them there. So use those tools during great times of change. Make sure you don't leave that, don't get so busy that you leave, or so worried about something that you leave that stuff off. But astrologically, that's an interesting question. So what tools can astrology give us to help us stay positive in times of change? So I was thinking about that, and positivity can definitely loop around, themes of Jupiter. That's sort of a positive planet. But more importantly, because that wasn't convincing enough to me, but more importantly, wherever Jupiter is in our chart at any given time is where we are relaxed. And certainly when we are able to relax, it automatically brings us closer into this inner reservoir of peace. It brings us closer. So if we can understand where in our chart, and more importantly, not understand up here, but identify with how we feel in the area where Jupiter is right now. If we can start to identify with that, it's an inner calibration that can bring us back into alignment with that peaceful, more positive place where we all feel happier, and it's a much saner place from which we can live our lives. It's a much saner place from which to make decisions, this inner reservoir of calm, rather than the frenetic craziness that isn't that. So it's a better way to live our lives, a better way to make decisions, a better way to combat times of stress and change. So I'm going to quickly go through and describe for you where Jupiter is, and be listening for where it is, and try to see if internally you can identify with that feeling of, yes, I am relaxed right there right now. And it's weird because I'm not usually relaxed there, because Jupiter moves, so it's only been there for a few months. So recently, all of us have felt more relaxed in a certain area of our lives. And when I describe it to you, like begin to tell you the story of where it is, and you begin to identify with that, notice that feeling like, yeah, I'm totally relaxed there. And you can take that tool of noticing that feeling of being relaxed. Once you feel that feeling, you can use it to relax yourself, just to think of this area, but you can also borrow that feeling and apply it to other areas. It's sort of maybe strange to think about it that way at first, but just play with this idea. First of all, noticing that this is where you feel relaxed. That alone, just the noticing, does a lot for you. Okay, so we're going to quickly run through each sign and just see where it is you're more likely to feel relaxed right now, and just get in touch with that. And that alone is a tool you can use. All right, here we go. So Aries, right now you are really relaxed about partnerships. Whether you're in one or not, you are just way more relaxed recently as of late, and really just the last few months. And for a few more months, you're just relaxed here. Like if you're single, you're like, yeah, it'll happen someday. I'll find somebody, or maybe I don't want anybody. Maybe I'm fine just on my own. I don't know, but have another glass of wine. Because with Jupiter, it always feels like we've had a couple of glasses of wine. And contemplating this area. So whereas before you may have been freaked out about your relationship, or a little worried, nervous, I don't know, just not totally relaxed, you're relaxed. And you maybe can't even figure out why, but you just have that internal calm. And Jupiter's giving that to you. And again, if you're single and before you were freaked out that you were alone, lately you're like, whatever. So that's Jupiter. So see if that resonates. If you can sort of like, yeah, that's funny, it's true. See if that's true for you. So moving on, we're going to move quickly here. So Taurus, it's in your zone of health. And it's funny because, so one way that's maybe easier, because health is maybe harder for you to discern this, but let's talk about scheduling and keeping to a schedule. So, and you've had Jupiter's where things expand. So there may even be issues around scheduling that are hard for you because your schedule, you've got so much to do and very little time to fit it in. But lately, over the past few months, you're like, yeah, all right. So I'm a few minutes late, so I can't fit that in. I'm just, who can worry about stuff like that? Suddenly that's your attitude. Or somebody, if you used to get really irate if other people were late and couldn't do everything they were supposed to, now you're like, yeah, I think, and I apologize, like for people who are alcoholics, just try to, we could talk about have another piece of chocolate, but I'm just using, I'm not trying to suggest everybody have it, but Jupiter is, closely affiliated with wine and grapes. So we're using that. But, think about have another piece of chocolate or have another scoop of ice cream. It's just whatever. It's just that like life, we are here to enjoy life, have more of the good stuff. It's sort of the feeling we get. So anyway, around scheduling, you may notice you're just not as hung up and uptight. And around your health, you could even have expanded issues around your health, like things you've got to take care of and things that maybe normally would scare a person. Like you might have a lump that you need to go check out, and you're going to take care of it. But like at the end of the day, you're like, it either is or it isn't something to worry about, and you don't know why you feel that way. But just try to calibrate with that and realize that you have this area inside of you already in some area of your life where you're very relaxed. Okay, so moving on. Gemini. So Gemini, this is the area of children, creativity, and romance. So for Gemini, whereas you may have expanded kid issues and a lot of kid stuff going on, and normally you might get uptight about what's going on with your kids, or worry about them, or just be up at night, not able to sleep due to stuff. And lately it's the same thing. It's like, I think it's going to be okay, or I'm just not as worried as I was, and I don't know, I think maybe things will just work out. And it's just more of this attitude, and just try to feel like in an area of your life you are relaxed. You can use just that noticing of that. You can use that to bring you back into an aligned place of feeling relaxed. Just to know you feel that way in one area, if you can kind of feel that. It's also romance, like maybe before you were freaked out around dating. Dating was always hard. Maybe it was embarrassing. Maybe you were worried about what other people thought. And now you're like, they like me or they don't, or I don't care if, I go on a bunch of dates where it doesn't work out, or I don't think they're Mr. and Ms. Right. I don't care. It's just fun. Like, I'm just going to have fun. And same thing with creative projects where you might have been angsty about, getting everything right. For Gemini's wordsmithing stuff, you may have been a little indecisive and hard to figure out your creative stuff. Now you're like, let me just play with it. Maybe it's going to be messy. Maybe it's not going to be perfect, but I'm just going to have fun with it. So just feel that. All right. So Cancer. Jupiter's hanging out in the area of home, the past, your parents, psychological foundations. And a lot of you, like stuff that used to bother you about your family, about your parents, about your home life, where you live. If someone's going to ask you lately how you feel about all these things, you're like, it's not worrying me. I'm just not really focused there. And I feel actually kind of relaxed, kind of good about it. Maybe it's not perfect, but I'm feeling pretty good about everything. And just notice that. Again, you're starting to align, you're even noticing that you're pulling closer to that inner reservoir of calm and positivity. For Leos, this is the area where we are possibly prior to Jupiter being here. Leo, you get embarrassed when you feel you don't look good. And here it's by what you do or don't know. Maybe what you understand, maybe your intelligence, when your intelligence is on the line or your skill set is on the line. Sometimes this can be an area of tension for a Leo where you may feel wounded or embarrassed if you're not perfect at something. And, even about like how you speak things, how you write things, whether your spelling's good or not. Before, maybe you had a little self-consciousness about that. And you may find you're speaking a lot, writing a lot more, and you're out there more, and you're just not as self-conscious and uptight as you used to be. So notice if you feel that way. Like, notice if you're feeling more relaxed about what you do or don't know. Whereas before, maybe you would have had an inferiority complex and been a little tempted to feel inferior by not knowing something. Now you're like, maybe it's easier to admit you don't know it, and easier to get past, feeling bad about not knowing something. Just notice, and if you start to where you think, yeah, that's probably true. I'm not as freaked out that I don't know something. I can admit when I'm doing something wrong more easily. Notice what that feels like, and that's already you pulling closer into that place of positivity and calm. For a Virgo, Jupiter's hanging out where you work and what you're doing to earn money. So because of the expansion nature, you may feel like there's a lot of work, and maybe I need to, because spending is so high, because it's also where you spend, I need to earn more money to keep up with the spending. But so you know that it's happening, but it's like you've had 2 glasses of wine. Once again, you're like, yeah, I've got to work more to earn more. Maybe I've got to figure out something about my spending, but I'm not going to get really it's not going to keep me up at night. I'm not going to let it worry me. And I feel more relaxed than I would have imagined. If you can feel like that may be true, that's you. Identify that feels like around that topic and see that's already you kind of getting a little calmer and a little more positive automatically without you even trying. That's just where Jupiter is. Libra, Jupiter's in your sign, so this is a year when Libras are going to seem more relaxed to others. Like Libras are typically a little tense, a little tight, because their mind's always like, maybe this, maybe that, and it's exhausting to be a Libra sometimes in their minds trying to decide something. Sometimes it's exhausting, and Libras are discernibly more relaxed and to others, and probably internally you feel a little more relaxed too. And you may have, and we all do, we have stuff going on in our lives. It's not all easy. Stuff in the world's not all easy, but a lot of Libras are taking it on the chin a lot more easily, and even just kind of naturally, bubbling over with something that feels more like positivity. So if you can identify with that on any given day or moment when you're not feeling that way, try to see if you can remember that overall you've been a lot more positive. Again, the minute you do that, you're pulling yourself back in to this place of calm and positivity, if this makes sense to you. So overall, so just to be clear, you're feeling more positive, but there's still stuff in your life going on that's hard. So if you feel like you're being pulled into fear and negativity, just remember that overall the past few months have been pretty darn good for you, and there's a lot of positive stuff happening for you in your world, and try to pull yourself back with that and identify with that feeling rather than the upset, scared feeling. Okay. So for Scorpio, it's a little bit like Libra. People aren't maybe perceiving you as relaxed yet, but in your mind over the past few months, you've just calmed down a great deal and relaxed a little bit. This is where Jupiter is. Jupiter's like this little buoyant balloon that just kind of keeps your mood up and kind of catches you every time you start to fall. Notice that this has been true, and just by noticing that over the past few months you're not, like, the world doesn't always seem to be ending. Even if bad stuff's happening, like bad stuff could be happening in your life, no lie. I mean, there could be stuff like going on all around you, lots of stuff that normally would have taken you down into a depression isn't. Notice that and cherish it. And there will be things that start to pull you off center, but notice that there's this little thing catching you, and identify with what that feels like, so you can carry that with you long after Jupiter has left here. Begin to identify what it feels like to feel more relaxed. Sagittarius, this is in the area of your future and your charitable organizations, professional organizations, groups of people you do stuff with. You're feeling very relaxed around working with groups of people. You're feeling very relaxed about the future, even though there's a lot of stuff in your world that's not necessarily going well. But you have a tendency when you look out into the future to feel pretty positive, often without knowing why. But you feel pretty like, it's going to work out. I'm not worried about the future itself, this thing called the future. I'm not really worked up about it. And also, you're feeling really good about a tribe or group of people you work with toward a cause. That is an area where you're feeling really good. Align with that. Just that feeling of feeling good and positive. Like, because there are going to be other areas in your life where you don't feel that positive and great about stuff. But in this area, you do start to notice what that feels like, and how calm you get when you think about it. Capricorn. So Jupiter is filling the space of your career and your future career direction. And so a lot of Capricorns are feeling very optimistic and positive about their careers, even if a lot of bad stuff's going on. Even if you doubt yourself, still have self-doubt. There's this, when you look at your career, and whereas before, in years past, you may have been fearful or unsure or negative in some way about your career direction and where you're headed. Now it's like you just can't get that worked up. Again, it's like just, it's like you just had 2 glasses of wine, and your career's going the way it's going to go. Like you're kind of trusting in a way that it's just going to be okay, in a way that maybe you couldn't prior to Jupiter coming in here. Notice what that feeling feels like, this relaxing around something. And the 10th house is an area where Capricorn can get really tense and kind of hard-edged. And around this area, you're loosening up in a good way. And you can use that, gauge how you feel around that. Notice that you actually do feel relaxed there. And you can apply that feeling elsewhere in your life. So Aquarius, this is the area of higher learning and ideology. So it can mean so many different things here, but I'm just going to pick one example. So Aquarius can sometimes often be fixed around ideological things. And right now with Jupiter here, whereas before around like ideology around religion, ideology around politics or worldview, you're more likely to be saying right now and feeling, very genuinely like, I see their side and I'm not too caught up in being right. I don't feel the need to defend. And a lot of stuff could be happening there for you where you're feeling challenged to deal with this stuff, politics, worldview, religion, ideology, maybe even within a legal setting, a legal case. But you may even have a huge, because Jupiter expands things. There's a lot going on here in your world, and you're dealing with it, and there's a lot there. But you're just not as worked up, and you're not as rigid as you could normally be, and you're more likely to be thinking to yourself and feeling genuinely like, I see their point of view. Like I've never identified with that religion, and I feel like my religion is the religion, but I can kind of see, I can identify, and I'm just not worried about their point of view, or that it's not threatening me. Their political point of view doesn't, I can kind of see where, it's all going to be okay or something. But there's it's all going to be okay. And I'm not tense around this. And I feel generous. There's a generosity. And whenever we feel that generosity, that comes from that inner place, that inner deep reservoir that has peace and calm and positivity and hope. You have this generosity that's unusual maybe in this realm of ideology around whatever your rigid beliefs have been. And we all have rigid stuff within us, rigid beliefs somewhere. With yours, it's more likely to be religion and socioeconomic stuff, political stuff, the law even. So maybe whereas you were strict in one way about your thinking about the law, now you're like, we need to think in a new way around this, or something like that. But identify with maybe how that may be true over the past few months, where you're like, I just can't get that worried about it. This is an area where this relaxation around that can be applied to other areas. So Pisces, for you, this is the area of finance. So over the past few months, you may find that even though there are a lot of financial issues you've got to deal with, like taxes, you may have expanded need to deal with your financial world, to deal with finance, to deal with money. There may even be some potentially negative kind of issues around your financial world, but you find somehow miraculously that you're like, yeah, I don't, just can't get that worked up over it, and it'll just take care of itself. So, it's a whole other question as to whether that's the right attitude to deal, maybe with expanded financial issues. Maybe you can use some of the luck of this. So that's a whole other conversation, but you can identify with that. It'll all work out. I feel pretty okay about it feeling, because it's a calmer feeling. It brings you back into that center pool of calm inside of you. It's a much better place from which to make decisions about how to deal with that. So it helps you, even when there's a big mess there, you can get more calm in these areas where Jupiter is in your chart and make better decisions because you're loosened up. You're not as tense. You're more in a place of positivity in times of great change. All right, everybody. Hope that helps. Take care.